Hello and welcome to Maggie Mumbles. My name is Maggie, and on this channel I mumble about the things that are interesting to me. Right now I am interested in reacting to my previous videos when I did the Witching Challenge in 2018 in my old Facebook group. I am discovering whether or not my beliefs have changed, how they've changed, why they've changed, and talking about these differences and similarities. So if that sounds interesting to you, please make sure that you like this video, that you subscribe to this channel, and that you hit the bell for notifications, and then you'll know every time I post a new video. Right now, this is Editing Maggie, and I am creating a new intro for part 3 of day 2. So hopefully you've already seen part 1, where I talked about the definitions of what is a witch, what is witchcraft, and what is magic. And then part 2 was the first 6 myths and misconceptions that I talked about in the Witching Challenge. And now we're going to look at the next 6 myths and misconceptions in part 3. So if you haven't watched those other ones, it's probably okay. You won't necessarily miss out, but I would recommend it so that you have the full picture of what's happening here in case I reference things or whatever. But without further ado, I will hand it over to Maggie from the past, who's already done this reaction and is gonna take it from here. The next myth is that your practice does not have to be Instagram ready or photo ready to be valid. Social media is awesome because we get to join groups like this. We get to see inspiring posts. There's a camaraderie of seeing other people who are interested in the same things. Especially if you live in a smaller town or a place where witchcraft isn't necessarily accepted fully and you can't really do it so much publicly, but you can on social media because you can share it and see all these things. But it can be disheartening to see these beautiful, perfect looking altars and clothes and crystals on social media and feel like you're not doing it right. So you don't have to have a perfect camera-ready practice in order to have a valid practice. And honestly, it's not true 100%, but I think a lot of really powerful witches actually keep their practices really secret, not sharing their altars, not sharing their books of shadows or their grimoires, and that's okay too. So even if you have a photo-ready practice, you don't have to share it on the internet if you don't want to. So it's great, it's good to look at photos for inspiration, but your practice only needs to reflect you because you are the driving force of the practice. That's true. Still, I want to qualify the powerful witches not sharing stuff on social media, because that kind of implies that people who do share everything about their practice on social media are not powerful. I think what is more accurate is that just some people might not share and some people might. And their abilities and their experience doesn't necessarily have anything to do with that. But it is also reminding me of a Twitter conversation I saw last week, I think, where people were discussing that. Well, it was about the parasocial relationship that influencers in any space, but particularly in the witchcraft space, have, and their followers expect so much from them, but a lot of times even witchcraft influencers are not sharing real spells. It's a filmed setup because content creators like myself, we are creating content and it needs to look a certain way. It needs to follow the algorithm. It needs to catch people's attention so that more people will view it. So a lot of times what you're seeing on Instagram or TikTok or whatever. At the time that I filmed this video, I don't even think TikTok was I don't think it existed, but I definitely don't think it was as big as it is now. It wasn't in my awareness, at least. But on TikTok, where witchcraft creators have really grown quickly, and then on Instagram, on YouTube, a lot of the images and the videos that you might see, in some cases, they might be real rituals that someone has done. In my case, it's not a real ritual. There's no way that I could be filming something and also have my head in the right space to do the ritual the way that I want it to be done. So that's just full transparency. What you see on Instagram is not likely a person's real ritual. It might look that way in real life, but you might not be seeing what they actually did as well. Because again, it is for catching eyes, for, you know, keeping attention, for creating engagement, because that's what social media is about. So I do think that that's really important, that your practice doesn't have to look exactly the way that somebody presents their practice on social media, because that's likely not a real witchcraft practice. And I want to clarify that again, that when I do rituals and film them, the filmed version might not be real, but I am still doing rituals like that may look exactly like that, but in private, just for myself. You know, taking inspiration from these images is great. Comparing yourself to that and feeling inadequate or unworthy, that's not helping anybody. The next myth, and it's kind of goes along with the Instagram one. Sorry it's so dark, you guys. It's cloudy and rainy today, so I hope it looks spooky. But this kind of goes along with the having a photo ready practice. It's that you don't need to buy all of the stuff. So you might want all of the stuff. It's very, I mean, all of it is very aesthetically pleasing and beautiful. So you might want to get all of this stuff, but you don't have to get all the witchcraft stuff. If you are interested in learning about crystals, get yourself one crystal. Figure out what it means to you, or maybe two, and learn as you go. And if you are interested in learning about tarot, start with one deck. You don't need to have all of the decks. You can buy one at a time. Once you learn that one, you can move on and see if you're interested in growing and learning other imagery styles, or moving into oracle, or you could get, you know, oracle and tarot at the same time. But you don't need to buy all of the stuff out at once. Figure out what you want to focus on and start there. And then the other part of this is that you don't need to buy all of the things in general. You don't need to have all of the tools. A lot of things can be found around your home, especially like herbs. You can find a lot of the herbs in your pantry. And you can also find some of these plants if you go out into nature, as long as you are collecting responsibly and you're allowed to collect in that area. You can collect some of these herbs in nature. You can use rocks from your driveway, are just as powerful as a crystal. I know it's not as beautiful necessarily, but you can use all these other things that you can find. You can use, instead of buying a beautiful magic wand to start with, you can just use a twig, or you can make your own. And if you look at old magic spell books and grimoires that from our ancestors a long time ago, they often made use with what they had. You know, there wasn't capitalism trying to cash in on anything that people will pay for like there is today. We have a great example is that witch kit that came out recently. That was capitalism in the works. Witchcraft is becoming more popular, so now they're trying to sell you on it and sell you all of these things. And the other part of it is that when you tag a word like witch onto something, automatically they can charge you twice as much for it. So you don't have to buy the witch cauldron. You can use a cast iron skillet and they have little ones that you can get that are not as expensive. And I know that's not necessarily what you want to hear, and of course buy those things if you want them. If you want the perfect cauldron with the little pentagram on it, or whatever it is that you're longing for, of course get it if you want it. Just don't feel the pressure of having to have it all at once to feel like you're a witch, because oftentimes making things yourself is actually going to add more power to it, or turning something that you found at a thrift store into your magical tool is going to add more power to it, because you named it that thing. You added your power to it by naming it your cauldron or naming it your magic wand, versus someone else who's trying to sell you on witchcraft naming it that. If that makes sense. So you don't have to buy all the things all at once. You don't have to buy the specific witch thing, and you can use what you have. Is basically what I'm trying to say. I still agree with all of that. I think what I want to clarify, because I do think I was a little all over the place when I was saying that. Again, I didn't know that I had ADHD then. I don't know if that would have helped anything, because I'm still all over the place. But something that I have learned is that when I get something that was mass-produced, I have a bunch of witchcraft and tools and things that I've collected over the years. And the things that I use the most in my practice are actually things that I found at thrift stores and was like so excited because I thought, oh wow, I could use this. My wand actually my sister made for me, so that is really special to me as well. I found my cauldron at a thrift store, which was a great find because it actually does have a triskela? You know, the thing, the triangle Celtic knot that's like, you know, it has that on it. So I was really excited when I found it because it looks like what you could find on like Amazon or something like that, or in a witch shop, but I found it at my thrift store. So, you know, it might have come from Amazon originally and someone gave it away, but it felt really special to me at the moment because it felt like such a find. And so I use it all the time. And I actually had a different cauldron before that I did buy on Amazon, or no, I bought it at a witch shop in Portland, and I did never use it, even though it was basically the exact same thing, but I was just less excited about it because it didn't feel like, you know, like I'd hunted it out, I guess. I don't know, that might not be a universal experience. Anyway, I think it's important to just recognize that you don't have to buy everything. Save up for the things that you really want. Find things locally. Buy from witch shops. I'm saving up right now for a handmade broom from Hearthcraft Brooms. And I love the videos that she makes. She puts them out and she makes them by hand. They're just so beautiful. I think the next stock, the shop restock is mid-October, so I might have to go ahead and get one at that. But I've been watching for so long and I love it and I want one so badly. Here's another one. My point is that this would be something that's like meaningful to me, and it might not be necessary for everyone to have a broom like this, but this is something that I find to be important to my practice, and I think that I would really treasure something like this, something handmade, something of somebody that I've been following for a long time and have been appreciating their work. You know, I'm not just going out onto Amazon and finding whatever broom. I'm sure there's local art, like real artists who make things and sell them on Amazon. This particular person I've been following for so long and have been admiring for so long that it would be more meaningful to me because of that connection. The point is, you don't need anything in order to be a witch, and you can prioritize getting things that are actually meaningful and that you'll actually use. To sum it all up. The next one is that you do not have to do what everyone else is doing. And this one also kind of goes along with the previous two, that you don't have to buy everything, that you don't have to be Instagram ready. But basically, if you're not interested in crystals and everyone's telling you that you have to have crystals, you don't have to. You can do what calls to you. You don't have to learn to read tarot if you don't want to. You don't have to make a book of shadows. You can keep a digital book of shadows if you would prefer. That's what I used to do until sort of recently I started actually writing things down just as a personal choice. But you don't have to write things down physically. You can type them on a computer if you're more connected with that. You don't have to do it in the way that other people do it. It can be a recipe book of spells. It can be just a daily journal. That could be your book of shadows. It can be anything that you want to do. Just because someone else is doing it, just because someone has a fancy incense burner or has 2 black cats or a beautiful herb garden, if you're not interested in any of those things, you do not have to have them because your magic is yours. You get to do what you want to make your... Witchcraft should be something that enhances your life, not something that makes you feel like you're inadequate or you're not doing something correctly. So if you're feeling inadequate, then just let go of the need to please everyone else and do what makes your soul happy. Recognize that your magic comes from yourself and get yourself into that magical mindset through what makes you feel magical, not what makes someone else feel magical, if that makes sense. So that one kind of goes along with the other ones, but again, you can be a witch with crystals or a witch without crystals. You can be a witch with herbs, you can be a witch without herbs. Whatever you want to do is your practice. I used to say that a lot, that witchcraft is meant to enhance your life. And I still believe it, I just haven't said it in a while. It's interesting, like the things that I would really emphasize based on kind of what I was experiencing at the time. So at that time, I think I was feeling like inadequate because I didn't have all the things, or because I wasn't doing things exactly the way everyone else was. I found it hard to practice the way that was being presented to me, or the way that people were writing about their witchcraft practice at the time, because I hadn't really accepted the fact that I have neurodiversity, I have ADHD, and my brain works differently, and my ability to do things in that way is just not possible. I have to change things very frequently in order to continue to be interested in it. So my practice looks different for like monthly. And sometimes I'll go back and do things the way I did, you know, a year ago, because that sounds interesting again. But doing things consistently the same way over and over again every month is not interesting, and it makes me want to not do it anymore. And that's how I am with everything, not just my witchcraft practice. So it's really interesting to see how I thought about things then, especially with the knowledge that I have now of the way my brain works. At that time, I was feeling overwhelmed with the way that other people were presenting witchcraft, so I felt like that's what I wanted to tell people, was that it's okay to make sure that your witchcraft is always enhancing your life. That was what was really important to me at the time. Now I've kind of like absorbed that, and it's not something that I feel like I need to say all the time, because it's part of the way that I practice. It's just like part of it. So I don't need to emphasize it as much. And now what I'm emphasizing more is the stuff I mentioned before about the way I view emotions. and so that's why I talk a lot about on social media now, is like shadow work and the importance of feeling your emotions and all of that. So it's just interesting, the things that I emphasize and the things that I talk about like a lot, based on what I am recognizing in my own journey. The next myth is that this one's kind of interesting. Magic and practicing witchcraft, there is some sacrifice involved with it. Not like sacrificing a lamb or something like that, but there is a little bit of sacrifice because it's adding something more into your life, and sometimes that means you have to make less time for something else. So some people will come to witchcraft thinking that it is a quick fix or a quick solution to any problems, or a way out of their problems. And magic works because you do. So you have to put the effort in, you have to put the time in. And to find that solution, magic can help you to find the solution, but it's not going to do it for you unless you put in the effort to work towards a solution to your problems, or work towards creating the life you want. And sometimes that means you have to be in new situations that you might not be 100% comfortable with. Of course, don't do anything that makes you unsafe, but sometimes you do have to push that envelope a little bit further than you are, outside of your comfort zone. And again, magic should enhance your life, so it shouldn't feel like work. It should be something that you enjoy doing, but just like with anything, it does take a little bit of effort and time and energy, and that means that from time to time you'll have to sacrifice something else from your life in order to make time for your practice, if it's something that you want. There's only so much time in the day, so you have to prioritize. Do I want to practice witchcraft today, or do I want to do this other thing that I also enjoy? And you have to figure out, sometimes you might sacrifice the other thing, sometimes you might sacrifice your witchcraft practice. And that's just a truth. Laying some truth on you. I want to emphasize here the idea of it not being a quick fix. And we talked about this already in this video about taking action. Oh, maybe it was in the intention video. Anyway, at some point we talked about taking action towards your intentions, and that goes beyond just like casting a spell, lighting a candle, or whatever it is that you're doing in your spell work. In order to get the things that you want, you have to take action on the opportunities that are presented to you and see where they take you. That's what I mean by the sacrifice. And I think I did explain it well enough, but I just wanted to emphasize that, and the fact that there is only a certain amount of time in the day, that you only have a certain amount of energy. So where you're directing that energy is important. Something that I do much more now than I did back then is making everything that I do a ritual. I mean, not like everything, but being intentional with the things that I'm doing. So if my goal is to develop my friendships, then I would prioritize going and spending time with my friends, and sort of making a ritual out of that, or doing a ritual prior to a gathering where I focus on my intention to strengthen those friendships, and then going to that party or whatever, and strengthening the friendships, doing the things that are necessary for those friendships to develop. And I talked about this also in my new book, The Kitchen Witch's Guide to Healing and Self-Care. There's another passage that I want to read from chapter 3. The longer I practice witchcraft, the more I find that simple magic found in mundane moments of the day is just as powerful as elaborate rituals, if not more. For this reason, kitchen witchcraft and incorporating magic into domestic work supports self-care beautifully. On those days when we become overwhelmed with the things that need to be done, many of us let our spiritual practice slide to the bottom of the to-do list. You may know that connecting inward will improve your mood, ease the pressure, and help you face challenges head-on. Even with this knowledge, it's easier to justify spending your time and energy on basic needs like eating, sleeping, cleaning, and earning money to pay for these things. By incorporating magic into these seemingly mundane tasks and finding the magic they inherently possess, you can easily balance your responsibilities and basic needs with your desire and spiritual fulfillment. Taking care of yourself, your home, and your loved ones becomes the ritual. That's more aligned with how I view magic now, is putting your intention into the things that you're doing. And that's what kitchen witchcraft is really about, is, you know, when you're cooking, you're putting your intention into that cooking process. And I see myself as a kitchen witch, a green witch, a hedge witch, kind of an eclectic witch because I have a lot of beliefs. But the kitchen witch aspect is that like mundane magic practice. And so there's less sacrifice involved because you're not having to set aside time for elaborate rituals. Your rituals are the things that you would be doing normally, like cooking. So there's not really a time set aside, you're just adding a little something to the thing that you're already doing. I mean, you might consider that to be a sacrifice because you're sacrificing an elaborate ritual in exchange for, you know, a more mundane ritual. So it really just depends on what you think about all that. The next thing is, you don't have to find a new god or goddess to worship. You do not have to have any god or goddess to worship at all if you don't want to. But there's an idea that you need to have like a patron goddess or god that you work with in your magic, and that's who you always talk to. But I think this is popularized by Wicca, so it's not necessary for even for Wiccans, but also for any witch. You do not have to have a new god or goddess to worship with. If you're not called to someone, then don't force it. And again, if you do want to have a patron god or goddess, then of course go for it. But if you don't feel like it, then you don't have to. You can also keep your current religion if you're just coming to witchcraft now and you have a religion that you feel really comfortable with. If you're Jewish or if you're Buddhist or if you're Christian or Muslim, then you can keep that religion and still practice magic if you want to. Or you don't have to have any god or goddess associated with your craft. You can see yourself as like a co-creator. This is kind of where I am in my practice. I see myself as a co-creator with the universe. Some people view it as like spirit, the fifth element of spirit, or some other non-god entity. And whatever you feel is the source of your power, then that is fine. You can incorporate your magic into it. But there are also things like chaos magic that has no literal god at all, or there are secular witches who don't have a god or goddess, a deity, religion type of association. So you do not have to have a god or goddess. You do not have to have a supernatural sky boss or something like that. There are like magical traditions within many of the major world religions, and researching those, if you identify with any of those religions, and you don't have to be religious at all. You can be an atheist, you could be agnostic, whatever your belief system is, you can practice witchcraft. I think what's important that I didn't necessarily say distinctly in that video is that witchcraft is not a religion, which means you can have any religion or no religion and practice witchcraft, because witchcraft is, I don't like saying that it's a hobby because it's a little, I feel like it's more than a hobby, but it's like how you can be a knitter and also a Christian, or you can be a gardener and also Jewish. Like you can practice witchcraft and be Buddhist or whatever your spiritual belief system is, your witchcraft practice can be applied to those beliefs. The next thing is that you don't have to do everything all at once. You don't have to be good at everything all at once. This one I think is what overwhelms a lot of people, is you see all these wonderful things that you can do with witchcraft, and it's so beautiful. You want to do everything, but then you get overwhelmed and maybe give up. So you don't have to be good at everything all at once. I mean, I have been practicing for about half a decade, and I'm still learning and growing in a lot of areas, and I know a lot of you have been practicing for a lot longer than I have, and I'm sure you're still growing and learning. That's something really interesting about witchcraft, is that you never stop learning. And I think it's probably true about all areas of life, that there's always a new way to learn and grow in a different way, and that's beautiful. So instead of getting overwhelmed by all the things that you don't know yet, remember that it's a journey, and it's so wonderful that you get this opportunity to learn all these new things, and just embrace where you are in this moment and see how you grow as time goes on. And it's okay to be where you are, even if you don't feel like you know everything you want to yet. Don't get overwhelmed. Don't feel like you have to be good at everything all at once. Nobody learned how to read the tarot cards in one night. It's the same with like singing. People aren't born naturally good at singing. You have to train. Or authors aren't, the first book you ever read by your favorite author was probably garbage. So, or the first book written by your favorite author was probably garbage. So everything takes a little bit of time to learn, and that's part of it. The practicing and the learning is part of it, and it's okay to be wherever you are. There's something called the beginner's mind. I think it's a Buddhist philosophy. I can't remember right now. It's about being a beginner and that how exciting that stage is. So when you are a beginner, you have so much excitement about what your potential is, because there's so many things that you can learn about. I think it's also important that when you're not a beginner, to revisit that feeling of being a beginner, to maintain that excitement for things, because there's always more to learn. This idea of being overwhelmed, one thing that I teach in Witchcraft 101 is that having an idea of what you want out of life, who you want to be, what you want to do, what you want to have, gives you an idea of what you need to learn about. And doing a profile about the things you're interested in, and the type of person you are, and the things that motivate you, and what you care about, your values, your interests, your concerns, all of that stuff can give you kind of a map of what you need to learn about in order to get to that place. Then it kind of helps with the feeling of overwhelm, because you have a roadmap of like, well, I have to learn this in order to learn this, and in order to learn this in order to get here. But recognizing that things take practice, to just follow where your curiosity leads you, to follow whatever's interesting you in the moment, and just enjoy it, the whole thing all along the way. That keeps things from feeling overwhelming or feeling like you're behind. Where you are is exactly where you need to be. And the last thing is that you can do it. So this might be a myth you tell yourself, that you can't, but you can. When you look at other people and you see accomplished occultists and witches out there, you might feel like you're not good enough, but you are. You are good enough. You are perfect where you are, and magic it doesn't always go the way that you plan, and it might not always work at all. It might not work at all, and that's okay as you're learning. And it's appealing to just give up, but you can do it. You don't have to give up, unless, I mean, if magic isn't your thing, then that's okay, but I wouldn't imagine that you'd be here in this group if you were not interested in witchcraft and magic. Maybe you're just exploring your options. But if magic's not your thing, it is okay to give up if you don't want to do it. But try, keep trying, and you can do it. So just go for it, keep trying until you get it. And we're all learning. You know, sometimes it doesn't work for me. It often works for me, but sometimes it doesn't. So just know that it's okay to fail sometimes, and that's part of the process. That was a cute way for me to end that, but just like a little motivational, you can do it type of thing. One thing that I mentioned there is that you fail less often, the better you get. And I don't believe that now. I think that was probably a little bit of my own imposter syndrome. I fail just as much now as I ever did. So more experience, because at this point I said I'd been practicing for half a decade. Now I've been practicing for a full decade. The whole time has been like the same consistency, and failure is just part of it. And as I said in the intentions video, failure gives you a clue as to what you need to tweak. If things aren't working, you change your intention, you change something about the spell, you learn from that failure, and then you try it again. So I think that that's what I was saying in that video, but I just want to be clear that the longer you practice doesn't mean you're going to fail less. You might feel more confident about it, you might have a better understanding of what went wrong so that you can fix it for the next time, because that's how I feel now, that I'm like, oh, well, this is probably what happened. So it does give you that. People who practice anything, you still make mistakes, like with writing. I've been writing for longer than I've been practicing witchcraft, basically since I was like in 3rd grade and I wrote my first story. That was a good story, and sometimes I think about bringing it back. It was a novel about a princess, obviously, and she had a call to adventure. It was a hero's journey. And I had this amazing map that I drew out with like marshes and stuff. Anyway, I've been writing since then. And just because I've been writing that long doesn't mean that I never make spelling mistakes or choose the wrong word or structure my sentences poorly or am redundant or all of these different writing mistakes. I still make those same mistakes. When I get into the editing process, I'm better at fixing them now because I have more experience with it. But anyway, that's just an example. Like, no matter how long you practice something, you're still going to make mistakes at it. Your mistakes will be easier to fix, and you'll be more equipped to understand what might have happened because you have more experience to back it up, but it doesn't mean you're not going to make mistakes anymore. So just to clarify that, but I do still agree with the fact that you can do it. You can learn anything, whatever you're interested in with witchcraft, you can learn about it and you can practice it. Keep that like motivational ending, I guess. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please give me a thumbs up, make sure you're subscribed, and hit the bell notification as I mentioned at the beginning. I'll be continuing with this series from the Enwitching Challenge. In the next video, we'll be talking about walking your talk. So this is another one that I do have the videos recorded still so I can react to myself. And that was so much fun, and I really wish that I had all the other videos to do this with, but I don't, unfortunately. So we won't be doing that beyond the next video. We'll continue the series in the Enwitching Challenge with walking your talk next time. Have a great, wonderful, perfect morning, evening, afternoon, or night, whenever you're watching this video, and I will see you in the next one.